Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 93 of the Citrix Session. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. We're getting close. Bill, we're getting close, almost up to 100.
Yep, getting almost there. That's right.
We got to start thinking about how we're going to celebrate, and knowing the two of us, we probably won't do a whole lot. So I got Bill Sutton with me. Bill, Director of Services. Bill, I'm gonna publicly acknowledge you for all the great work you're doing here at XenTegra. It takes a lot off of me, and I just want to make sure the world knows that without you and a couple other people, it wouldn't get done. So thank you.
Oh, well, I appreciate that, Andy. Yeah, it can be challenging sometimes, but it's all good. We try to get it done for our customers. That's really what it boils down to, and our partners. That's what it boils down to.
I think the short way to measure it is I don't have partners and I don't have customers that complain ever. I always know we could do better, right? We could have better consulting methodologies, all that stuff, but man, nobody complains anymore, and things get taken care of. That's huge.
Yeah.
It's kind of like waiting tables. It's kind of in restaurant business. It's kind of a thankless job. Nobody talks to you until something goes wrong, and I don't get many complaints, which is great.
Well, that's good. Yeah, but you're right. It can seem thankless at sometimes, but every once in a while you hear something like this, or you have a customer who says, you guys just really did a great job, and kind of makes it all worthwhile. All the frustrations that fall up to that kind of go away.
Yep. Yeah, I get proactive thank yous, very little, if any, complaints, which is awesome.
Good.
Well, I got Ben Rogers on. Ben used to be as IT director. He knows all about complaints and not getting enough accolades. Ben, how's it going?
I'm doing well, Andy. Day after Halloween, so we went out and did some spooky things last night, and trying to stay away from the candy bowl this morning.
I can only imagine with your personality, you probably have a really good time with Halloween, don't you?
We had a blast, man. Plus, I live in a very large neighborhood with a lot of kids, a lot of decorations. So yeah, man, we blow it out.
Is your kid out of school today, or they had to go to school?
Oh no, they had to go to school. So it was funny. By about 9:30, all the parents were shooing all the kids back in, getting them ready for bed. And
yeah,
all the kids kind of had a little sleepy eye this morning, but they got candy to get them through.
The local school system here, a lot of them actually have a teacher work day, just so conveniently the day after Halloween. So it kind of works out for them, but not my kids. My kids had to get up. Well, my high school kid, the high school started late. Like they gave in and started late the day after Halloween. I guess they just knew they knew they weren't going to be there on time. Kind of sad, kind of.
Yeah, ours had today off, and tomorrow's an election in Virginia, so they're off for 2 days.
Yeah. Well, guys, we have a special guest with us, Akshay Kakar. Did I say it right?
Yes, you did.
Thank you for joining us. We're going to review your blog here in a minute. Do you want to give us a little background on yourself?
Sure. So firstly, happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Akshay Kakar, I'm on the product marketing team for Citrix. I work on Citrix's cloud-delivered security product. It's called Citrix Secure Internet Access. We launched earlier this year on February 3rd. And with the grace of all the customers that we have, and all the folks like yourself that have been talking about us, we've actually gained significant traction in the market. So we've seen customers and seen enterprises want to beef up their cybersecurity architecture, and we are engaging with them on that. Before this, I've been in the cybersecurity space. I've been in the networking space, product management, as well as product marketing.
Yeah. Where do you live?
I am in the Silicon Valley area.
Okay, awesome. I'm sure we'll get into it. So I don't want to steal our thunder from the blog, but I appreciate you joining. And it's interesting to see Citrix in this space. And look, I've thought for 20 years now, the idea that you could remotely access something, but not actually download it, turn off printing, turn off file transfer. Citrix to me has been a security play for over 25 years now. It's interesting to watch Citrix turn it into a full productize and evolve the offerings. If you don't think of Citrix as a security play, you're missing an opportunity for sure.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah. So there's a lot of folks think of Citrix as just being able to access certain applications, but they kind of forget the security aspects of it. There is a lot of productivity related features in Citrix where you have one place to access all the business critical applications, but the security that goes behind it and that's embedded in it is a major part of the DNA as well.
Yeah. Hey, Ben Rogers, I know you're well, I'm going to say it the way it popped in my brain. Don't take offense to this. I know you're a security nut. Thoughts on the general idea of Citrix being a security play before we jump into this specific blog?
Well, I've always for years explained it to the companies that I've worked for that
Citrix provides a window into the environment where things like a VPN actually bust a hole through it. So, man, the concept's just been reverberating across the industry for so long. I think we take it for granted, but it is truly a security play because you lock people out, you give people access through web interfaces. You never really let them into the environment like you do with a VPN or any other technology for that. So that's kind of how I've been explaining it for years to corporations I've worked for. And I'm now glad to see we're finally getting the recognition that we deserve on that end.
Yeah. I often use the example of WikiLeaks. A guy downloaded 10,000 documents. He would have had to take in screen prints of every document, every page of every document to get the same thing. WikiLeaks wouldn't have happened.
Very true.
Very true.
All right, so let's jump into the intro here. Akshay, tell us what you're setting up. Well, hold on. Before I do that, this is a recent blog. The name of it, the title of it, Citrix and Chrome OS, secure, seamless access to all your apps for all your employees. Akshay, tell us what we're trying to talk through here in the introduction section.
Absolutely. So Google and Citrix have had a long-standing relationship, right? They've been working together in multiple areas, especially in the Citrix Workspace front earlier and the DAS front. What we are trying to do this time is there's this relationship that we've built with the Chrome OS business unit or the Chrome Enterprise business unit within Google. And the way we're working this is that we see the Chrome OS device with the Chrome Enterprise solution on top of it is a very robust device. So that device by itself has a whole lot of security features in it. It's an encrypted device. There's very little data that you store on the device. There's a whole lot of security policy that you can create on the device. And what we are saying is that, listen, for enterprises to be fully secure and productive, you need two things. You need one, the employees should have access to whatever applications they want. So even if there is an older application, say an older Linux application or an older Windows application that needs to be run on that Chrome OS device, we'll make that happen. And then we'll give you a multi-layered security model on top of the Chrome OS device. And I can talk through that in more detail if you would like me to. Yeah. But what we're doing is this relationship with the Chrome OS business unit, where we broaden the applications that you can use in Chrome OS device, and we give them better security. We build on to their existing security.
So we can jump through the blog and talk through. I think you're probably going to flush out the questions I have, but my first thought is, a Linux-based Chrome device is somewhat secure to start with. Is that part of the baseline here, and what you mean by it starts with a modern device?
Yeah, so it is. Yeah, so the Chrome OS device is a secure device. You're absolutely right. It is a very secure device. It's a lightweight device in the sense that it's very easy to provision, drop ship. If you've got new workers and if you want to just ship them a device and they log into their credentials and they access all the applications through Workspace. So yeah, it's super simple to manage. It's already a secure device. As I mentioned here, it's got the Titan C chip. It's got inbuilt data encryption, Google Safe browsing, a whole lot of cool features. So yes, it starts with that modern device, but there's more that we add on to that. And that's what we've covered in the rest of the blog.
So let me go to Ben real quick. Ben, I know you were adopting iGel Linux at one point, so you were going down to Linux. Well, first of all, let me ask the group. This is Google Chrome OS, but it's really Linux under the covers. Is that the right way to say it? It's how I've been saying. Is that right?
I think so. I've got a little bit of a different thought about this process, though. I kind of consider these mobile devices almost sacrificial lambs. If you have the cloud technology right and you're delivering the applications virtually, which we can do obviously, but Google's getting into that game as well. I'm kind of beginning to see the phase of what does it matter what's on the endpoint? As long as the back end that they're going to secure. And I'm interested to see what the group thinks about that, because as our guest was talking, I was thinking to myself, now we're getting away from worrying about the endpoint device. And now we really are coming into a bring your own device and lightweight Google devices. But I'm also beginning to see in the next 4 to 5 years, maybe we get to where we really don't care about what's on the endpoint.
Well, Ben, I'm going to get everybody's opinion on this, I promise, but I do want to highlight what just happened at XenTegra within the last 2 weeks. We started XenTegra with the idea, I'm going to give you money, you bring your own device, we'll have a secure cloud, you connect it, I don't care what your endpoint is. we've now learned that that sounds like nirvana, but we can't quite get there. Even though this is what we do for a living, we still are now going back to controlling the endpoint device because we can't just let it be the wild, wild west. Even though, as you just stated, a big chunk of this is all about what the back end looks like. But we have consultants and we have salespeople going into other environments, allowing them to take a XenTegra endorsed device into their environment as more than I can allow at this point. So even though I'm one of the biggest preachers of what you just said, I can't even do it myself.
But so I'm just going to pipe in there. So Andy, whatever you're saying, we're seeing more and more of that. So what we're coming to see is this managed BYOD model, if you will. Yep. So if Andy wants to bring a Chrome OS device, if Bill wants to bring a Windows device, and if Ben wants to bring a Mac OS, we want to be able to give you that level of flexibility. You bring in whatever operating system you want to, but hey, we are going to throw in a couple of agents on that operating system. And to ensure that regardless of what operating system you're using, you are secure on that operating system, regardless of where you are from a physical location perspective, regardless of what application you're using. And that's essentially, and also so that's the security aspect. And the other aspect of that is, hey, you want to be able to access any application whatsoever. So the operating system should not be a limiting factor to the applications that you get to access.
Yeah, let's give Bill a chance to speak. He's the one that's got the consultants out doing their thing, carrying around their own personal devices that we've allowed. Bill, your thoughts on this whole, you've been around it forever. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Andy, the holy grail is the device that we could in theory lose or get stolen and not have to worry about any data or any other information being on that device. And certainly the Google OS, the Chrome OS is one that would satisfy that. But like you said, there are certain other challenges we have that kind of lend themselves to more of a BYOD, a more extensive operating system like Windows or Mac. But we definitely need to start controlling those devices better and managing them so that we can control where the data is, because that's really my biggest concern of everything is, I've got consultants that are doing Visios and things like that of customer environments, and that information needs to be kept secure and encrypted, and we want to make sure we have some control over it. And one way to do that would certainly be put it in my data center and only restrict access to it via CVAD from an endpoint. But then that consultant might be in a secure environment where they don't have internet access and they need access to that document. This is not unique to our business. I mean, I can remember doing this for law firms years ago, and we had the same arguments that my attorney needs to be able to access this data when he's in trial and they don't have internet access. Now, that's not as much of the case now, but nevertheless, there's so many factors that go into this that it's not one size fits all anymore.
So Ben, we all just went around the horn and said, we love what you're talking about, but it's not realistic. What's your thoughts now that we've come back around to that?
Well, I can put myself in every administrator's shoes. Everybody's got a boss that wants to access their files while they're on a plane. And that's what kills some of this. And I came from that environment. As much as I would try to look at my old CEO and say, Mary, you really don't need to worry about it, she would look at me and go, what if? And it's those what ifs. And one of them is, what if I'm on a plane and I don't have access? Now planes are getting much more connected with the world, and that seems to be going away. But I guess there are still spots in the world where you would say, I've got to have physical access to the environment so I can do my job, i.e. in a federal bunker somewhere in nowhere, where XenTegra's technicians being asked to do something that's highly, secretive.
I think you guys are highlighting that if we can get a large percentage of our users working that way with a secure device that's owned by them or owned by us and accessing data that they never really have local access to, that's a big part of the win right there.
Exactly. I think it depends a lot on if you kind of segment your employee base, if you will. There is going to be a certain segment of employee base that require that, okay, I need to be able to, for instance, in a high churn industry, right? Or an industry where you just for whatever reason need to provision devices really quickly. In those industries, you want that kind of a device, such as a Chrome OS, which is super simple to manage and which is secure. But if in certain other industries, you're going to need a device that has a whole lot of local storage, that has that compute power. I mean, in marketing, I've worked with folks that are hardcore graphic designers and they need certain devices with certain applications sitting on those devices. So it varies a lot. But that flexibility of being able to choose the device that you want, and that flexibility of, hey, if I have Chrome OS devices, I want to be able to use any application and I want to be able to use it securely. That's what we are working with Google to provide.
So actually, this second section of your blog, the title of it was "It Starts with a Modern Device." We've talked a lot. Is there anything in this section that we've skipped that you think is relevant that we point out before we move on to the rest of the article?
I think it's so everything that you guys pointed out is completely relevant. It's there were some news articles earlier this year, if I'm not mistaken, that show that Chrome OS is growing very rapidly. So we are beginning to get into these situations where a lot of people do have internet access. A lot of people are working from home, and a lot of industries are opening to Chrome OS devices. And so what we are seeing is that that increased adoption of Chrome OS devices and Google wanting to back it up, obviously, and continue with that growth. So all I'm trying to say is that, hey, it is a great operating system. It is entering the mainstream arena of primary operating systems. Yeah, for our listeners out there, they give it a thought. It's a good device.
I'll just double down on that real quick. The idea that a lot of things are browser based and you throw a technology like Citrix into the mix managed by your corporate environments. There's a lot you can do that's real these days versus the theoretical that we used to tell people we were heading to. And pandemic only made that more real. Okay, next section, the title of it is Empower Employees with Seamless Access to Apps. I think this is a lot about what Ben was highlighting, and I guess maybe what I just doubled down on. What are we covering here?
Yes, it is a lot. So with a Chrome OS device, you have access to applications through Google Play. Google Play, it's a managed Google Play, where you can control which applications do which users get access to. And that's pretty cool. But every now and then, actually more than every now and then, most industries have at least some applications that are homegrown applications, might be sitting in the data center, might be in AWS, Azure, wherever. And those homegrown, I wouldn't call them legacy, but just traditional applications still need to be maintained. And those applications still need to be accessed from their Chrome OS devices. And what we essentially say is that, hey, if you're going through the Citrix Workspace application, you are able to access any app, including those traditional Windows and Linux-based applications off of your Chrome OS device.
You know, Ben was talking about a while ago on planes, and I fly a lot, almost every week at this point, and it's so hit or miss. But when that's solved, and as long as I'm out in the middle of nowhere, this becomes even more. And you keep in mind, you know, Bill and I, maybe you guys too, we grew up on 15K dial-up modems doing this stuff, which sometimes I even like better because I had a wired connection. But certainly becomes more and more real as the world around us evolves. And the needs and the demands for security, pandemic planning, work from anywhere, hybrid stuff, those things grow. Maybe they start to outpace some limitations that maybe Ben's former manager who thinks they've got to have it on an airplane, they'll just have to sacrifice for the benefit of hybrid and secure work.
What I think is the most interesting about all this, Andy, is let's think about, where Citrix has come from over the years. When I first got into Citrix, is about giving Windows access and Mac access, and you never really saw a lot of Linux. And now with the modern day, man, you're looking at really all three, and you never can really tell what's going to be, thrown at you. So I like the idea of our product kind of being able to mix with all three of these OSs and being able to basically allow connectivity and allow application access, for whatever OS you're in. And I think for an organization that has to manage multiple OSs, like healthcare, one device for them does not fit all. This is a good solution to go, hey, tell us how you want it, and we'll be able to provide the applications through this workspace mechanism. And so I think this is a really powerful part of this blog, because it just talks about how all the technologies are blended together through the Workspace app.
Well, yeah, I want to talk about that real quick. Guys, are we doing Google Chrome OS a disservice by lumping it into the Linux bucket, or are we doing it a service by lumping it into the Linux bucket? Anybody?
That's a deep question that I'll hand off to the crowd. I don't know if I know enough about the OS to really comment on that with education.
To me, it kind of makes sense to call it Chrome OS as if it's one of the three players when it's time to call it Chrome OS, but it also makes sense to lump it into the Linux bucket when we're trying to get some of the benefits of Linux, like, you know, a less attack vector, more secure, lightweight. Actually, that's probably one for you. You can defer it if you want.
Yeah, Andy, I'm not an expert on the OSs, but I would say that I think Chrome OS offers way more than just the Linux OS. It does have that similarity in DNA is not probably the right word, but it has that similarity in what Linux can provide. But then there is a lot more, especially with all the backing that has been getting from Google.
Well,
and I'm just going to complete one quick point. I mean, you'll see Google, like a lot of the other vendors out there that are the size of Google, they're trying to blend a lot of things. They're trying to blend GCP with Chrome OS with other stuff that they provide. For instance, the Google Workspace, where the applications are, right? So there is a lot of that blending taking place, and that's power of an ecosystem. And when you blend that ecosystem with, say, the Citrix ecosystem, that's a comprehensive whole that you don't get with just, say, Linux or something else.
But it is Linux. That's the funny. That's where I get like it's where well, okay. So two things. One, the user interface is now familiar because it's based off the Chrome browser. That's one piece, and the other part is they have their web store where you have all these applications, thousands at this point, and at some point, I believe they're going to have access to the Android store to run on top of Chrome OS. Bill, you said they already do?
They already do.
Like a Chromebook has access to the Android store?
Yeah, I installed Android apps on the Chromebook we got 5 years ago or 10 years ago, whenever it was we got it.
I think my challenge there, I work a lot with Google Cloud Ready, what used to be Neverwhere Cloud Ready, and I don't think they have access to the Android store yet.
Oh, okay.
I believe, and this is just my opinion, that they're going to get it. And then all of a sudden you went from, a ton of apps to a whole ton. I'd use some slang there if I hadn't stopped myself, but a lot of apps. Well, let's do this. Let's talk about this next piece, which goes and doubles down on the security conversation around a secure endpoint and an access model that's secure. Actually, you want to kind of talk us through this? Sorry, my browser keeps jumping around.
Yeah.
Stronger multi-layer.
Do you want to scroll down the? Yeah. Do you want to scroll down to the diagram? It's probably easier that way.
Sure.
So essentially, yeah, what we're saying on the left is, listen, we've got a secure endpoint with Chrome OS, and then there is a Chrome Enterprise upgrade that can go onto that Chrome OS. So there's a whole lot of security policy that you have. We've spoken about that. Now and we've already spoken about Citrix Workspace as well. There's another product called Citrix Secure Internet Access, and for those of you that have not caught it, think of Citrix Secure Internet Access as a whole. Pretty much all the functionality that you would expect in a data center-based security stack. So you've got the SWG, the secure web gateway, you've got the firewall, you've got the malware protection capabilities. Plus, you've got stuff like CASB, cloud-based sandboxing, anomaly detection, deep user-level analytics. So you take all of that security functionality, you club it all together, put into a high-performance architecture, and you toss it into the cloud across 100 different points of presence. And that's what Citrix Secure Internet Access is. So Citrix Secure Internet Access is a cloud-delivered security solution delivered from 100 different points of presence. So what we are saying is that we create a multi-layered security model. So let's just say you're protecting a king and a queen in a medieval time war, right? So you're gonna have multiple layers of security between the enemy and the king and the queen. And that's what we are doing. We are giving you that one layer of security, which is provided by Citrix Secure Internet Access, and the other layer of security, which is coming from the Chrome OS device and the Chrome OS and the Chrome Enterprise upgrade. So, and yes, you've got the Citrix Workspace as well, which has some granular security features. For instance, you can do things like watermarking, or you can do things like disable cut copy paste. So some of those functionalities are available as well through the Citrix Workspace app. And then the Chrome OS device by itself is a secure device as well, which has its own security policies. If I'm not mistaken, you can do things like, okay, you won't allow USB sticks to be installed, or you won't allow certain if you've used a password in one location already, you can't reuse that password. So there's things like that that Chrome OS also provides, the Chrome Enterprise upgrade provides. And with that, what you're essentially getting is that multi-layered security model in this architecture.
I think it's funny.
Does that
We've been
help?
talking this whole time about a secure endpoint and accessing, the stores, as well as using Citrix Workspace apps specifically. And then all of a sudden, this secure internet access thing where the traffic's being directed appropriately and monitored, and analytics are going along with that monitoring. All of a sudden, that just ups Citrix's game big time in this space, right?
Big time. Because keep in mind that, listen, see, folks are accessing let's just say you finish your work today, right? At 5 p.m., you go onto a basketball forum, or you go onto Reddit or wherever, and you click on a couple of links and stuff like that. So you do need that access even when you're outside of Citrix Workspace app. You need that level of protection. When you're outside of Citrix Workspace app, you're doing recreational browsing. You're not sitting behind an enterprise firewall. You need something that's protecting you without having to do a PN or anything of that nature. And so Citrix Secure Internet Access is that invisible, but always there, always on protection that's blocking any threats from entering your device. And then, of course, you have the Chrome OS as well. And Citrix SIA, Citrix Secure Internet Access, we have this relationship with threat engines. So let's just say there's a threat discovered in, say, hypothetically, Japan, a couple of hours before. And then we will update our cloud based on that threat intelligence. And so you're always protected against the latest threats. There's a whole lot of functionality that's available in that product.
Yeah, I've got some comments here, but I want to defer to, let's go to Bill first. Bill, thoughts on adding this extra piece of the story that we already thought was magical?
Well, the story that we already thought was magical. I think there was one piece we weren't, maybe we were talking about it, but not directly. I think I got, at least I know that historically when I hear access, via the Citrix Workspace app, I'm thinking virtual apps, virtual desktops. That's what we've always, that's where I grew up. But obviously we know that the Citrix Workspace can enable single sign-on to SaaS-based apps, which are equally as critical, if not more now than they used to be. Folks are using SaaS apps, and having a device that we can secure and enable seamless access to those apps is just as important, if not more so, than the access to the traditional Windows-based apps, hosted on a server somewhere. This just adds another layer to it that I think is critical. You mentioned Akshay, you mentioned Reddit as an example. I know that some of my consultants will go searching for a solution, and it'll take them to places like that and beyond, unfamiliar sites that may be in foreign countries, and having this kind of layered security here certainly would provide a lot of benefit to them and to our customers.
So guys,
absolutely.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm just gonna. So you're absolutely right. So when you say in other countries, so keep in mind that we spoke about this earlier, that your workers, your employees, your consultants are traveling, right? So they're in a whole lot of different places where they could be under attack, if you will. So
right, exactly.
So guys, let's tee Ben up here. We told him the idea of BYOD plus the cloud wasn't good enough. If we take BYOD plus this layer of security with the agent, which I should like to point out, which I always do, it's part of the Citrix Workspace app package anyway, I think. Tell me if I'm wrong. If we take secure internet access plus the cloud, are we then back to telling Ben he can bring whatever he wants? Does it take it a step further? We're closer at least, right?
What do you think?
Where I think this is really a play, I go back to my old days of having to manage firewalls and user threat management systems. And, this really lifts that part out of the administration of a corporate security framework. And so where I'm really excited about this is I can look at, cybersecurity engineers and go, hey, I know there's a certain amount of effort to keep these firewalls updated, make sure the traffic's flowing through them, making sure all the policies are upgraded and all those jazz. Let us take that off your hands. Similar to the way that we look at them with CVADs, is let us take that weed and feed off your hands and let you concentrate on what you really need to be concentrated on, and what is allowed out of this facility and what do my employees need to be looking at on a daily basis. So for me, I'm really excited about that point, is that it now allows us to provide another service that makes us competitive against the other user threat management systems that are out there. So I'm excited about that point. When it comes to, does this create the nirvana where you could get, this to anybody? It would, in a sense that I could say to my, engineers that are out there in the field, it doesn't matter where you're at. I'm going to be able to backhaul all of your traffic to one resource and make sure that regardless of what endpoint you're on or regardless of where you're at in the network, you got the same coverage that you do regardless. And that's really killer, in my opinion. And that's a step beyond what you can do with a traditional firewall layout.
Yeah, Bill, you hit the nail on the head there. So you're absolutely right. So wherever your engineers are, we have these points of presence. As I said, there's 100 different points of presence. So your engineers are going to be sent to that point of presence, but that backhaul isn't going to be as much as it used to be back in the day. Let's just say you got 3 data centers with 3 stacks. Now you got 100 different stacks. So right. So it's pretty much direct access to those SaaS applications, pretty much direct access to your internet. Hey, Andy, one quick thing. So it is the Cloud Connector agent for Citrix Secure Internet Access is different from Citrix Workspace. And that kind of works out because there's a lot of folks that are already using Citrix Workspace app. Or there are some, and as we are talking to more and more customers, including net new customers, there are some customers that are looking, or there are certain information security teams that are separate from the CVAD teams that are looking at Citrix Secure Internet Access. So this kind of is right now giving us a flexibility of having a separate conversation if we need to. But yes, in the future, I can't mention publicly, but it's possible that the agents might be combined and unified. From a management plane perspective, there is unification of management plane between all Citrix products through Citrix Cloud.
Well, I think that's where you're going in this next section, where you're talking about simplify your operations, both what Citrix is doing for you as a service, as well as what you have to do as the managing IT organization.
Yes, and exactly. So what Citrix is doing right now is that you log into Citrix Cloud, you see all the different products that you have, and you can go into whichever product you want, you can start managing that product. And you've got that unification of management. And then also, as Ben was mentioning, from an operational overhead perspective, right? You've got no more boxes to manage from a cybersecurity perspective. All those boxes are done away with. You've got a cloud delivered security service. So you just log into that cloud delivered security service, you make your policy changes, those policy changes get pushed to all your employees, and everybody's happy. So from that simplification of operations perspective, we believe that it'll not just improve the OpEx numbers, but also we've heard multiple security breaches in the past where cybersecurity teams were just too overwhelmed to ensure that they've got the latest patches, they've got the latest policy in there. And so if we are able to take some work off of their hands so that they've got more time to think and more time to analyze and more time to penetration test, then we believe it'll also improve their cybersecurity posture.
Yeah. So Bill, how do you see this impacting the customers that you're working with?
Well, I think it's, the customers we're working with, I think this is something they're not aware of probably, and probably we need to help make them more aware of it, because I think it's definitely got to fit with a lot of them.
Yeah. Only the ones that care about security.
Yeah.
It's a paradigm shift though. And that's one thing that I would, Andy and you and I have talked for years about how it takes a societal move to kind of get things going. And our first example was going from desktop to Workspace app. 5 years ago, you told me I would create career suicide if I took them to Workspace or whatever it was called receiver then. But now I think that very people would be open to a dashboard type of environment. I think with cybersecurity engineers, you're going to have to get them used to the fact that, hey, you don't have to have these products on site, or you don't have to physically see where these products are in your data center or in the Azure stack. And you're going to have to kind of let them know that they can give up that management plane, the same as we've done with our Citrix administrators for years. I think that's going to be the challenge of getting them to think about, oh, this lives in the cloud, this lives wherever my services are close to. And that's going to be the piece that I see being a challenge, kind of going forward, is just breaking that paradigm shift and getting them to understand that this is a different way than they've done over the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Ben. To some degree, I think a lot of the cybersecurity, the CISOs around of the world have kind of bought or drank the Kool-Aid of layered approaches to security from other vendors and have bought a point product to do this and a point product to do that and a point product to do that. And they've got a huge investment of those technologies, not to mention the renewals of those technologies. And it's going to take some education, some time to get them to consider something like this all in anyways, at least initially.
And part of that's just the vendor name, right? I mean, Citrix is seen as seen as the access people, not the secure access people, and not the security company. This clearly helps me understand where Citrix is making a play on security, which we already had, but now we're playing in a different piece of it, and it's a vendor that you're already knowing and working and trusting. People should consider it.
Yes.
Exactly. So think of it this way, like, so you've got your application, you've got you, and then you've got the application that you're connecting to, and then you've got the fabric in the middle, right? So Citrix is everywhere. What we want to do is we want to be able to control that entire end-to-end, or support that entire end-to-end, so that you as a user have a great experience. So we'll do the optimization over there in terms of the productivity. We'll do the cybersecurity over there and to keep you safe. And that's essentially what it is. And then the ecosystem is created in a manner such that it blends with the other vendors that you might be using.
Yeah. Well, and I think you just said a keyword vendor. I mean, Citrix and Google being a play where you can, like, those legacy security vendors probably don't really have a Google play. At the layer we're doing this, all of a sudden, something like Google Linux, I'll use both words together. All of a sudden it's irrelevant, more or less, as long as there's the agent that can run. And now all of a sudden the cloud makes it to where the security play fits, whether it's Windows, Google, Mac, you name it. Go ahead.
I think there's an opportunity, and this is not an official statement. I disclaimer that, and this has not been mentioned at all inside the Citrix walls, but I would love to see them take this product to our ADC and build this into our ADC, because a lot of people could then turn their ADCs into their outbound gateway. And then you could really start talking about competing against the Palo Altos, the Fortinets, because the ADC is already kind of a Swiss Army knife firewall in a certain extent. We get this outbound traffic going through it. So to me, when I look at our product portfolio and how this product could fit into the portfolio, we obviously could, deliver it via cloud and have it cloud be 100% of the answer, but we also could create a solution that could hinge on our ADCs and go, hey, if you've got ADCs, let's start leveraging them for the outbound traffic and implement this user threat management via the SIA product on top of it. So like I said, no mention of it, but when I look at our product portfolio and I go, the things we could do, that is one thing that I see that we could do that would be very slick and very cool.
Yeah. So actually, bring us home here. Let's talk about where Citrix and Google are truly partnering across the ecosystem of what they do together, but specifically here.
So from a technology standpoint, we've discussed a lot from a technology standpoint. What I would also say is that we are, I can't disclose a whole lot here right now. There's some futures involved in that. But what we are essentially trying to do is we are trying to go together to customers to ensure that customers are not overwhelmed with just multiple conversations with different vendors. I've personally, in my past lives, I've spoken to customers where they were very happy when two or more vendors kind of joined forces, came together as one to solve the customer's problem, versus the customer having to do all that multiplexing. So
I'll add to that real quickly. Two vendors that you probably already going to have in-house, seeing them come together and solve challenges for you is a win-win.
Yes, and exactly. And that's the goal. We're trying to get the Google guy, the folks at Google, at Chrome OS, talk to the folks at Citrix, get familiar with each other's stuff. And then it's just, as you're saying, the customer probably is already familiar with both the technologies. Now 1 + 1 is equal to 3 here. So that's basically what it is.
Yeah. So Ben, as we start to finish up here, any additional comments around what you see Citrix and Google doing?
Well, what I'm kind of starting to get fascinated with is you've seen Google get into the education market like no other, and they kind of have become a dominant force in that market. I see that starting to happen in other markets. You're starting to see Google get more prevalent in healthcare, finance. So I think the same way they've gone after education and dominated that market, they have the possibility of doing these other markets as well. So I'm glad to see that our company's partnering up with them. And I think the two solutions could really flip some Windows environments, man. I mean, I don't mean that as a threat to Microsoft, but it could be really interesting if you could go into a shop and go, you can do the same thing today with cheaper products, lightweight OSs with a more secure environment. It's kind of a win.
So Ben, I want to challenge something you said. You said Google going into education like no other. I think at our age, right, we saw somebody else do that turned into a pretty lucrative company at this point. You know what I'm saying? Like Apple, they're just doing what Apple did, except they're not going to limit themselves to education and the consumer market. They're going for a bigger chunk of it.
Oh yeah. And I think they're never really strong to me commercially. They never took the business idea. They were or ecosystem, personal. They did some education. Google, you're in knee deep.
Yeah. All right, Bill, you want any additional comments?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with most of everything that Ben had to say there. I certainly think that there's a place for the Google Chrome OS, and I think that more and more companies are going to take a look at it. I know that in my past, I've had a couple of companies that were early adopters of the Chrome OS for access to Citrix apps and desktops, but I think that it certainly is compelling for a lot of companies to look at something that's more secure and easier to use and easier to manage for their employees to use to access their resources.
Yeah, no, that's true, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I appreciate you joining us. Before you go, is there any other topics specifically to this one or comments to this one or other topics you'd like to maybe use this platform to bring up?
No, thank you for having me here. Yeah, let's keep the conversation open. If there's more sessions that you'd like to do with Citrix, please come and do so. It's awesome.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye out for your blogs for this topic and beyond, these topics and beyond. But if you have something that you write that you want to highlight to us and ask that we bring it back on, that would be awesome. This has been a really good conversation.
Yes.
Will do so. Thank you so much.
And with that, guys, we'll call it a day. Thank you.
Have a good one, everybody.
Bye-bye.